Rachel from the ANU Makerspace, and this video is going to take you through the basics of what you need to get started in Illustrator preparing files for the laser cutter. I'm going to use the example of this trolley key tag, which you may come across if you come and do a laser induction on our laser cutter. First things first, I'm going to create a new file. So I'll select new file in here. And I'm going to make sure that my document size isn't any bigger than our laser cutter bed. Our laser cutter is 800 by 500, but I'm drawing a pretty small object. So I might make this 100 by 100. I'm also going to make sure that the color mode is RGB. You can change this later, but easiest to set it up now, and it does need to be RGB for the laser cutter. So I'll create that file. I've got my little 100 by 100 artboard. And you might have a look at my workspace and think that's a bit different to what you're seeing. There are different workspace options you can choose. I'm in the Workspace Essential Classics because that's what I'm used to, but other workspaces have similar tools available. They just might be in different places. I'm firstly going to be drawing up my shapes to make up my trolley key tag. So I'm going to need a circle, an ellipse, a rounded rectangle, and probably another circle. All of these shapes are under this tool. Any of these tools with the little triangles on their corner, if you right click or if you hold down on them with a click, you'll get a further menu with more tools in it. So this is the shapes menu, and I'm going to draw first an ellipse. I'm going to click once on the artboard, and I'm going to define the size of this ellipse. For a trolley key tag, I need a $2 coin shaped object. So that would be a 20.5 millimeter diameter circle. Press OK, and that will have defined that up. I'm then going to draw a rounded rectangle for the shank of the key tag. I'm going to use a width of 12 and a height of 35. I want a fully rounded bottom of my rectangle, so half of the width is perfect. Press OK. I then need another little circle for the trolley key tag. Now for this one, I don't really need it to be as tightly defined as the others, so I'm just going to click and drag to make my little circle. I'm going to hold down the shift key to force it to be a circle, and I just need it to be between 4 and 5 mil, so about there is fine. I'm then going to align and move my objects around, but to do that I need to select them. So once you're done with a tool, go back to the selection tool. In these tooltips you can see they do have shortcuts, so I can press the V button to go back to it, but for simplicity I'm just going to show you by clicking. There are two selection tools. This selection tool allows you to select objects and move them around. The second selection tool you may want to use in specific instances, but it's generally for selecting specific parts of a path or specific anchors, and you can move those anchors around. So I just had to click once to select the object and then click again to select that anchor, and I can also drag around handles to alter my shapes. But I want a circle, so I'm going to undo that by going Control Z or Command Z to get it back to a circle. I can also select things or multiple objects. I can select one object, hold down Shift, select the other until I get all of my selections done, or I can take advantage of Illustrator's click and drag selection function, which clicks and drags, and if I just touch any of these objects, it will select them. I don't have to completely enclose an object, just touch it. You can also select objects using the layers, which will list all of the objects that you have drawn, and you can click the little circles next to them. I'm not going to go too much into layers in this video, but know that they're there and they can be quite useful in organizing your file. There are a few ways to align your objects. I can click and drag and use these smart alignment guides, these pink lines that pop up, to align it to where I want. So when I've got the center and top one here, I'm just going to let go to drop that in place. I can also use the alignment tools that pop up when you have an object or multiple objects selected. So for instance, these two, I want to align top and center. I can either align to selection, align to a key object, or align to artboard. Align to selection is the default, and it will just center these if I press this center button, but maybe I don't want this one to move. So I'm going to make it a key object by just clicking this one object again without holding anything down. With that one now my key object, I can center it, and you can see this one pops over to that object. I also want them to be top aligned. I'm then going to move this little circle, and I want it to be in the middle of that radius, but it's really not helping me by snapping it to the center of that sort of radius end. So I'm going to use a different method for this one. I'm going to pop it, align it to the bottom center, and then I'm going to move it by a specific amount. I'm going to do that by transforming it. If you right click on that object, you get this context menu, and there are a few extra tools in here. I'm going to transform this one by moving it. This little menu is asking us where we want to move it. And this is a relative moving dimension. So I actually want to move it vertically upwards and not horizontal at all. So I'm going to pop in 0 horizontal. And I want to move it 6 millimeters vertically. So I'll pop in 6 here, but you'll notice with this preview on, it's actually showing me it's going to move it downwards. And that's because the positive horizontal is to the right and the positive vertical is down. So to move it up, I need to pop a negative in here. And with that preview in place, you can see that's where I wanted it to end up. I can copy it in this box, or I can just press OK and it will move that object. I now want to combine a couple of these shapes so that I'm cutting the outline of these two shapes, not all of these inside bits. Otherwise I'll end up with sort of 4 little useless cuts in here. To edit paths, there are a couple of methods. You can click on an object and use the scissor tool. The scissor tool is under one of these menus, under the eraser tool, and I can use that to cut at intersections, delete the bits that I don't want, and then join the remaining outside. But there is a simpler way to do this, and that's using Illustrator's version of a Boolean tool. In Illustrator, it's called Pathfinder. So I'm going to select the 2 objects I want to combine. I don't need to combine that little circle down the bottom. And I'm going to open the Pathfinder toolbox. This will pop up. I've got it saved over here, but you may have it pop up in the middle. You can click and drag any tools that you open and keep them in your workspace. So I'm going to use the Pathfinder tool. These little pictorials are pretty self-explanatory of what they're going to do, but you can also hover over them to get a further explanation. I'm going to combine these 2 objects by using the Unite tool. And you can see that that's done all of that deletion and joining for me. Super simple. I'm now going to insert some text to etch onto my little object. So I'm going to use the text tool here, click anywhere. I might put in my initials. I'll press escape to get out of that text object. I'm going to zoom in a little. On Windows, you'd press Alt and zoom in, and on a Mac, it's Option and zoom, and use your scroll wheel to zoom in. I'll then click and drag my text to move it over to my object, but you'll notice I can't center align this, and that's because my text object is left aligned. To fix that, I'll go up to Paragraph and center align it, and now I'll be able to snap that to the center of my object. I'm going to make that text a bit bigger. This is a pretty small object, so I want to make it visible. And I'm going to move it vertically up and down just by eye to get it in the center. You can also nudge it up and down and around until you're happy with that placement. When I have text that I'm bringing in from a personal computer, I want to make sure that I expand the font. And that's because if you bring it in without the text objects expanded, the laser computer could substitute that font with another one just because it doesn't have it on that computer. To expand your objects, your text objects, we'll go up to Object, Expand, press OK here. And you can see that that has turned that object, if I go to the direct selection tool, into shapes, into paths with vector points and all. Go back to my selection tool. Now I'm going to apply my laser cutting parameters to these shapes that I've drawn. I need to apply my cut parameters to these objects. So I'll click and select the ones I want to apply the cut parameters to. And I need to apply a stroke thickness, a stroke color, and make sure there's no fill. So we've got a fill is this little square, and if I click on this one here, that's our stroke. You can also see these up here on the top. I want to make sure I have no fill, so I'm going to click here and press none. I can also just bring the fill forward and press the none button here. And then I'm going to change the color of the stroke. So bringing that stroke forward, I'm going to double click on it so the color picker comes up, and I'm going to make it select a full RGB red. I'll use the hex code, which is FF0000. You can see that makes my full RGB red color pop up. Press OK. And then I want to apply a stroke thickness to this. So that's up here. I want to make that 0.001 millimeters. Which is the hairline thickness needed for the laser cutter to recognize vectors. It goes a little funny just because it can't really display a hairline that well. I can preview it on the CPU instead, and it'll give me a better indication of what this looks like. I'm then going to check my brush stretch that I want to do, that it's in an appropriate color. I'll click on the fill, double click into that color picker, and make sure it's a grayscale color. Grayscales are any RGB values that match. So 100, 100, 100, also a grayscale value, but a full black is perfect for what we're doing. Great, so that is now our file prepared for laser cutting. You can bring this, pop it on a USB to bring it onto the computer at the makerspace and get going on your laser cutting journey.